So, are you all seeing the title of the presentation?
Imagining textual data.
Yes. Yeah. So I usually try to come up with witty names. Coming up with names after a certain point proved to be difficult in this project. So if it's confusing, please let me know. This was also a very complex project, or sort of the concept is a bit weird. So I'm trying to convert CSV data into PNG. Almost sounds a bit controversial, or like, why would you want to convert CSV to PNG? So let's go. I'm going to skip my background. You guys already know that. So today's agenda is when you feel you have too much data. Well, one of the solutions is to compress it. By compression, well, we could think about zipping it, and that would mean that during gameplay you would have to unzip it, or maybe you create some kind of smart way that when people install it, like install the game, that you do the unzipping once. But by too much data, I mean maybe at once you read a few megabytes of data from the hard drive during a game session, and I'm thinking that might be too much. Also, querying that kind of data, I thought might not be practical. And also, when you have a lot of data, like, what is the data structure? Are we thinking of JSON here? Or, I mean, if it's really structured, maybe we could go with SQLite or some other file-based database too. So I came up with my own system, which I'm kind of calling abbreviated form array, image, and denormalization. This isn't just one like straightforward process. There are many more layers to this, either before or in between these steps. But essentially, when we have a CSV file like this, let's present it here in Excel. This is just a pretty way of looking at the CSV file. So in my case, I needed to process 10,000 lines of, or 10,000 rows of data, and the column numbers are also like, I think we have 36 or 39 here. I can't. And the data is not simple either. In each one of these columns, you have the values are also CSV. So you have to, like in my case, I had to break down all these bits too, and not all of them were important to me. So there needed to be some kind of pre-processing or post-processing.
Yeah.
So
that data is like so disgusting.
It is disgusting. So
CSV into a CSV.
Yes, it is very disgusting. And also, these 6 parts are mandatory, but the rest is optional. To give you a bit more context here, like, what is this data? What is it representing? This is weather data. So there is this government website. They have been storing weather data. This is the hourly data, and I'm looking at the 2010. This particular file here is for Toronto weather station. There are multiple weather stations in Toronto. This is the one at the airport. So each one is given a code number. So at this weather station, they have been measuring things hour by hour. Sometimes there's an extra one in between, like the hours are usually like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, but sometimes you will have another in between measurement too. So each one of these files will have close to 10,000. So in the game that I'm trying to create, I need to process a lot of data. And so this one has a few extra files. It's not going to make much difference, but basically for 4 cities, and there are multiple years of data here, you are looking at 660 megabytes. So that's a lot of files, a lot of data, and also it's disgusting. It's even more disgusting. So I thought I should at least convert this data to a more usable format. While JSON is one of those common file types. But again, accessing it during a game, and there's going to be a lot of reading and finding the value. That's fine to a certain extent, but I also want to introduce a certain level of randomness in my game. So I came up with this idea to convert this into an image. So this is what the talk is going to be about. So let's see. I know how to convert sort of basic stuff into an image, but to get to this end result, I needed to do some maybe preliminary work. First thing is to massage the data so that it is an array of arrays. So that in the end, we are going to have one array of arrays. So this is going to be a matrix in a sense. And that array will be converted to an image. And I'll show you the code too. So I'm just walking through the steps here. We got to normalize these the values. And by that, I want to discuss maybe this part here. This weather data here for Toronto, January 1st at midnight. They measured the wind direction as 220 degrees. So it's like a circle. It's always the increment of like 10. And it's just showing you direction of the wind. This 0026 is this is all metric system. But in this case, this 26 has to be divided by 10. So that's essentially 2.6 meters per second. So in this value here, we have to extract the useful parts, and you got to do that for all the rest. But the normalization process is important or required because when you want to write the values like 16,000, some other arbitrary number, because I'm going to convert the data into image, and I have to be giving, I have to provide the color code. Say, if an image is composed of red, green, blue, and alpha channels, and I know that each channel can have a maximum of 256 values, the values are going to go from 0 to 255. So in essence, if 16,000 is, in this case, coincidental, this first one, there's a maximum value for the visibility. It's actually 160,000. This just happens to be at the 10% of in this scale. So I have to be marking that as 0.1. So then for each measurement, I have to know its minimum and maximum, and I have to convert its real value to the normalized value. So that's what this process is about, and I'll again show the code. And at this point, we could create a JSON file. That's actually quite possible. It's like we all know how to do that, like CSV to JSON. There are even converters. So that's done. I'm just debating whether I should show the code to this point or maybe walk you through the process first, then show the code, maybe come back again. Let's see. If it's too confusing, stop me.
Well, I mean, I'm just a little bit confused about why, an image is the best way to store this data.
Yeah. Well, okay, short answer before you have to wait for the end of the presentation. We start with this file, which is 4.59 megabytes. We end up with this file. It is only 124 kilobytes. That's the short answer.
So, like, does the CSV file have like long strings of the same data that would sort of map to the types of solid blocks of color that PNG compresses well? Is that why it's so much smaller, or?
True. I'm basically using 4 channels of color to hold many like bytes of string, basically. It's compressed in that sense, and
you're right, because the CSV isn't just storing the data; it's storing the text of the data. So, if you have a 4-digit number, it's not just storing the number; it's storing those 4 characters, which would be 8 bits each, and which is more than you really need.
Here is actually the real benefit. I mean, compressing it is good. But this is what I can also do. Maybe I should here.
How big is the JSON after you've normalized your data and stripped extraneous stuff?
Yeah, a good question. Now, the process. When I sanitize my data, this is actually the real number. Well, okay, this actually has gone through multiple stages at this point. So the real answer is. I haven't extracted all the optional fields. I have only extracted the 6 fields, but those 6 fields are in this JSON file. So this is actually game ready file, but it's still 2.30 megabytes. So essentially the comparison should be between this one and this one. So when I said, okay, maybe we are coming down from 4.59, maybe that wasn't the most honest answer, but this is the honest answer, like from here to here. Because these two files, data-wise, they are correlated.
Okay, and how big is the PNG again?
124 kilobytes. So
okay, so it is quite a bit smaller.
So and it is very small, and according to my tests, the compression is between 87 to 95%. And I think it could get better. Well, this is what I tested in other situations. If your dimensions are more square, there's a bit of, there's more optimization done for you. In other words, when you increase the dimensions from 9 to 90, you don't just multiply it by 10. There's the more square it is, it's less than times 10, growing like 10 times direction.
But are you compressing the actual PNG? Because then you have data loss, right? If the PNG is going under image compression, the point of that is to remove data in a way that's not visually noticeable. Right?
PNG is lossless. It's JPEG that's lossy.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but you're not loading PNGs through Godot, right? Like their import manager changes it to some localized file type.
But okay,
it's like Unity. Like an image says it's 124 kilobytes, but depending on what device I'm loading it on in my import settings, it's going to be completely different every time, right?
Actually, I overcame those issues. Well, let me show you the end product then, instead of slides. So here's my from sanitized JSON. I'm creating this image data JSON. This is the part I was talking about, array of arrays. So when I have a file like that, which is this, I open this, and this file has now been encoded, which created this file. And now if I want to simulate that file, I am reading that file, and I have a simulator here. So each second it reads the next row from the PNG, and then each one of these is corresponding to a row here. So I'm only interested in this part, but I'm I'm reading all the way down. So these values are actually stored in CSV. So the compression, I get what you are saying. Like when it's PNG and Godot is during import, it does something to it. But I'm actually reading the raw PNG here, which is never displayed on the screen. I'm only interested in the data itself, not sort of the right way of saying it. Kind of interpreted result for me.
Did you check that all of the values read in from the PNG match the JSON?
Yeah, this is exact what you are seeing right now here.
But run through the whole file and both ways. And,
let's just do a test. So the first three values for wind should be 220, 250, 210. Okay, I'll actually when I run it, I'm going to quickly bring this one up.
Okay. I was just going to say that you can set Godot to use lossless compression when you import. I just shared my screen on the Godot system, and it's just in these that import tab. You have a compress mode lossless. So if you are concerned about compression that way, that you still have that option.
Yeah. So, and Ryan, I believe your question is answered, right?
Yeah, you just I would write a little validator to double check that every value is exactly what you expect, but
so let's look at 43.
No compression.
43, we should see
or lossless.
Yeah, I checked the values. So if the values were all over the place or off by some so if they were approximated in a wrong direction, I wouldn't accept this.
Have you tried using an SQLite database? Because you had it in CSV and you had it in JSON, and they're both text formats. Yes. But with an SQLite database, you'd be storing the actual numbers, and that might compress a bit better.
See, all these things are actually possible, but maybe here's the real benefit for me. Just kind of a little bit weird to have as a request. I want to randomize all this data, and I will have many more fields here. Now, reading a value and creating some kind of random value out of it, either 5% less, 5% more, isn't that much of a big deal. But here's what I'm probably going to do. I know that some of these columns, I know their designation. This one is wind direction, this is wind speed, this is cloud height, that kind of thing. Using Godot's blend mode, I could be randomizing the whole column here. I could say for the next year's data, we are going to have less cloudy days, or I could apply filters here. My data will change all at once. So could you do this in a database? Sure, but maybe that sounds more like an overkill too, because you're accessing all the rows, all the columns to randomize and then write them to another table. Here I'm just doing a blend mode and it's done. I'm just exporting another image. And I could even do it at runtime. So that was actually the main benefit or main need for me.
You should be able to shader.
Yeah, with shaders, definitely.
Yeah.
So that's essentially what the project is, and the presentation is. Well, we can look at the code, we can look at the slides. So I'm okay either way. So up to you. The process is basically converting data to image. So then in the end, you have this sort of the style kind of image, a lot of funky colors. But this is the data. In this case, I made some blanket assumptions that certain things should be either 1 or 0. So that's why sometimes you might see pure white or pure black. But it's basically converting all numerical and textual data. Sometimes I need to hold values like C or N. They are designated a certain color. And once I figure out what color is corresponding to what kind of data, then I can questions, comments?
After sanitizing the data,
yeah,
did you try exporting a CSV with just the data you need and checking its size? Because JSON, you're getting a lot of extra like syntax in there. CSV, you're just getting commas. PNGs, you're getting metadata and EXIF data and stuff like that. Like even if I just my issue is I don't want to, but it's like a PNG object is a data holder for visual information. Blend modes are explicitly for visual information. And you're dealing with sort of like temporal information in a timeline. And I feel like there's got to be a better way to store it than converting it to a mode that I think, if we're visual thinkers, we prefer. You know what I mean? Like I do channel packing all the time for shaders and stuff like that, but I can't, like even when we generate noise, like simplex noise and all that stuff, like the image is just a way to represent it. It's you can do it single dimensionally, which is all you'd need if you're doing it over time. So like I feel like round tripping everything to an image, especially doing anything with a shader, is like now you're corralling data CPU to GPU and back. It's all very round trippy for what is effectively, like I would even export those CSVs to Godot resources. That way your N and your R can just be like enumerated in a data structure that's understood by the engine you're using inherently, as opposed to a data structure that's better understood by the visual side of your mind or whatever. And that way you can see what those resources, how big they are when they serialize and stuff like that.
Okay, but but the file size will still be too big. I tested that. Plus the randomization won't be possible because you still have to read.
Well, the randomization will be possible because blend modes are algorithms that you can look up. You can look up what each of those blend modes actually do. You can affect single columns because that data is coming in individual elements, right? At some point, you're looking up that data and splitting it out and putting it into that list.
By the way, this process is not happening during the game. This is for me to put into the like I'm going to take these files, these processed PNG files, and they will be part of the game. But this conversion process won't be done during the game. So maybe.
Right, but you said you could add randomization at runtime.
Yeah, I could.
Blend modes and things like that.
Or
right?
maybe when I launch a new game, like the player says, well, this is what I know the record is. When the players create a new session, I could randomize the data, and that's again just done once. And from that point on, the player session will have somewhat randomized data. So this doesn't sound very effective method, I guess, to all of you, most of you.
Well, I mean, it's certainly an unusual method. I just, I do kind of have that inclination that it's usually better to use formats for the purpose that they're meant for instead of this sort of weird kind of off-label use. But I mean, if it works, it works. And I can see how certain compression systems on PNG might be useful for this kind of data. But it just seems like now, obviously, a JSON or a CSV aren't going to be optimized for their size because they're text formats, and if they're storing numbers, then storing a number as text is going to take more space than just storing the value itself. But there are other ways of storing data, and I'm just kind of curious as to if you had this as an SQLite database or as a Godot resource or something along those lines, how that would compare in terms of size to this PNG.
Yeah, but again, size is okay, but it's not really a big issue, compared to randomization and such. I mean, size was an important thing to start with, but other benefits really outweigh the size issue, in my mind.
I think portability is sort of interesting with the image format, because you can have PNG anywhere. That's not going to be a problem. And then getting SQLite to run on different platforms might be a problem. But I think comparing it to I'm not sure how Godot does its binary data exports of whatever. That's what I would probably compare it to. Is just instead of having a PNG, just save the array of data in whatever Godot does there.
Could you elaborate that a bit more?
Well, yeah, I don't know, I haven't done this with Godot, but in other languages, you can save an array out to disk and load it. And then that's sort of like a binary format, right? And so then that would, not be storing the text representation. You wouldn't have the same compression, but it might, again, the size thing is just once you get down into the, one order of magnitude less than the text, then you're fine.
Yeah.
But I think it's just kind of fun that you can do shader calculations and is it worth it? I think the round tripping point is really good. You'd have to, sort of, if you really wanted to be optimal, you want to make sure that whatever data manipulation you're doing is worth doing it on the GPU, in a shader versus on the CPU as an array or just code, right? But again, it's kind of just for fun, as a fun thing to do. I think.
So the round trip is maybe this is where I can answer that. By the way, the simulation is still running; it's still pulling those values. This is really where I'm outputting the values. Say this is still very work in progress, so the names are all over the place. So from the image, I'm just incrementing the hours, and I'm going to ask for the wind's direction, wind speed. So there's a figured out method. This is basically going and finding the wind or the other qualifiers. And sometimes you have multiple measurements done under that, as you saw, wind, direction, and speed. So this thing goes to decode, and this is where we make one call to the image. We actually get the proper row. Just read the values, and then we get the wind, direction, and speed, or whichever one we are asking for. This is during here we'll also do the denormalization. So this is respecting that measurements minimum and maximum, and it's doing the conversion. So instead of 0.5, it knows what that 0.5 goes in its own scale. So there is really no shader work here. This is very runtime. Just the image is already in the memory. I'm accessing its pixels.
Yeah, generally though, accessing pixels is a really bad, slow thing to do. Maybe in Godot it's better, but it's always a real pain in other languages because you have to lock the image. Yeah.
The locking happens when you are writing. Actually, no, you're right. During the reading too, we are locking the image. We have to unlock the image. Yeah. But again, I only need it for particular process. To be honest, I haven't tested it in the game context, but I don't really see where it could backfire, because if I'm seeing these values pretty accurately, like say define performance problem, what am I supposed to expect? That these values are delayed because the calculation is not done?
Are you reading all of the values at once, or reading them like line by line?
Look like one at a time to me.
Well, right now, because I'm kind of trying to read, I'm running the simulator here to see if I'm able to read each line. I'm only, can I answer a question? I want to give the like most accurate answer. This whole image is already in the memory. I'm not reading the image again and again, but while the image is loaded, I'm accessing a particular pixel if needed. So I just created a simulator here that's accessing all these fields for me. So it may seem like I'm accessing everything, but that's just for the sake of, I wanted to see if I'm actually having denormalization done. I don't think I'll be accessing all this all the time. I mean, even if I do, I'm already seeing that case here.
Yeah, like I don't think you'd run into performance problems unless you were on like some sort of very constrained system. But then you just want like a completely different approach where you're just like totally minimizing some sort of memory access.
Yeah, I think
this is fine.
I don't think you'll hit any issues either. It's just to me, it's a weird way of translating that data a few more times than I feel like you need to, but I don't have the insight that you do. I also think if that image was 9 by like 9,000, you probably want to square it out a bit better.
Which I
8,000.
probably can't.
I'm like ye old iPhone days, you couldn't ship a bigger than 2K texture.
Yeah.
And they had to be square for a little while until they got those new GPUs that they did. I don't know if that still applies, but like honestly, 4K is my upper limit for modern day work.
I might have to do that. By convenience, I wanted to have 1 year's data in one file. As many rows as you see here. That defines the height of the texture or the image file. But you're right. Maybe I should divide 2010 into 2 chunks. Maybe.
Yeah, you could make it wrap on anything you want. Like it wouldn't really be a problem at all.
Yeah.
Just
because I will also need transitional files, or I will have those situations. Say from 2010, I will eventually come like to the like read all the way to the end, and I should be loading the next year's file so that I could start reading from the top values here. So if I'm already going to read from multiple files if necessary, so I could actually divide this in. Yeah, that is actually maybe a valid concern. So anything about 4K is again, I don't know. It has to be shipped and seen, I guess.
I don't think the 4K thing is a hard rule for like modern AAA games, but I'm coming from a mobile background, so I wouldn't.
So this game will never be on mobile. So there's so much going on that game design wise, it has to be done in a different way.
I remember when I was playing with the Panda 3D engine a while ago, before I started using Godot, it was talking about how for maximum compatibility, textures shouldn't be more than 256 by 256, because some old GPUs won't support that, but then it never really went into any detail onto how old we're talking about, what GPUs we're talking about, which kind of annoyed me with Panda, is that their documentation had a lot of gaps like that.
So another possibility about the dimensions. I'm still investigating how they keep the weather data. So all these fields, some of them won't be necessary, but some will definitely be necessary. And so most likely this 9 by whatever rows, this will most likely be 40 by something. And I know that as much as possible, I want to create a square dimensions. So I was thinking if I have 40 columns, maybe I was going to create one file starting with 2010, 40 columns, and then the next year's values are starting from column 41. That would actually make it square, but now that you said, well, maybe if 8K is too big, if I'm going to make it 4K or less than 4K, maybe I'll actually take the number of days and then turn them into. I think you guys are getting what I'm trying to say. So take this and then just put it here. It's more like a zigzag, up and from top to bottom, and then you go to another 41 column, and then you start counting down again.
Yeah, and since you know how many rows there are, you just offset your X lookup by that much, and as you stagger them next to each other, for sure.
I could do
or
that.
just like put like every month in its own set of columns. Instead of it being 9 by 8,000 something, it would be, I think, like 108 by still thousands, but not nearly as many, or maybe not even thousands, maybe just hundreds. Yeah,
divided by 12.
We're dividing by 12, right? So yeah, it wouldn't be 1,000. And
yeah. By the way, this is hourly data. You said month. I didn't.
Right.
So say hourly and then month. I couldn't do the conversion there.
Yeah. So that's yeah, but just each hour has is part of a month. So just just so that you have something to use as the cutoff point, because it might be useful in some cases to be able to easily tell, like, okay, I'm going. I want to look at March of this year. Well, I know I have to look like 36 columns over or something like that. I might be doing the math wrong.
So say maybe 100 pixels down here, or 99, is 1 month. So then here we start the second month. Okay, that's what you.
Yeah.
That would work too. So because then this file size is really going to go smaller. The more square it is, the more optimization is done. I mean, I'm not doing it; it's done automatically. That's how the compression. So that's pretty much my presentation. It's a bit awkward topic, but it was.
I mean, I'm not sure if I'm ever going to have a use for this information, but it's certainly interesting.
But okay, so let me recap. I understand it may not look beneficial, but when you have a ton of data and somebody has to sanitize this data, enter it into maybe SQLite or something, that's a lot of effort. But reading data in an SQL database isn't that straightforward. You still have to query data. I mean, sure, that's what JSON is kind of beneficial, which I have. Actually, I have some of those things here too. At some point I can actually read this and make sense of it, and then I'm converting it into sort of kind of compressed ready, and then this turns into the image. So this is I can see the errors easily. The process this way works, and I can create randomization on the final image. So that's really the only benefit, maybe. I don't really see any game company out there who would be willing to use this process, but I don't know. So that's what I have for tonight.
Yeah. I think it would be fun if you could somehow integrate the image data like into like actually visual to the players, like not because you have to, but just because it would be fun. But like I don't know exactly like how that would, like maybe as like a border decorations or somewhere, or like like something where it's just sort of like for aesthetic purposes, like you have it in an image anyways, put it into the game as something that the players can actually see. That would be kind of be just as something fun to do.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I understand. First, I think I understood you wrong, but that, yeah. You don't mean anything like this. You mean the image itself could have other aesthetic uses.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, because like you're storing it in a weird way, like might as well just like have fun with it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just an awkward looking image, really. I don't know. There's something either psychotic about this or calming about this.
Right. But like the color scheme and all this stuff
yeah.
is arbitrary, right? Like you could make it so that it is aesthetically pleasing. Like that could be part of the fun of this format, is that you're setting it up so like it looks nice and it's usable data.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if it's worth it, but like
it might be.
If you're making something for fun, yes.
I mean, it's like, well, it's like, what's the wind speed today? It's the shade of this. Like it's green today. It's, I don't know. I feel blue today because the temperature is low. You really see it blue, kind of. I don't know. Weird. But yeah. So thank you for listening. Is there are there any more questions, or I can show you code, or maybe you had enough? Up to you.
I had a question about the normalization. Do you know like the min max, or are you looking at the data for the min max?
I do know the mins and maxes.
Okay.
Yeah, which is here.
Yeah, because then there's also sort of like a weird problem where, because you're mapping those to like 256 values, like if the range, let's say the range is like really big, but like the normal values are like really tiny, then you like lose lots of information, right?
I'm glad you brought that up, because that was probably the most crucial and difficult part of this process. Everything else is you split the values by comma or whatever. So this part is going to look more or less straightforward. It's basically typical normalization. The only thing this is maybe taking into account if the values are changing sign, meaning if the minimums are in the minuses and maximums are in the positives, that kind of thing. Either way, all this is gonna be like all positive. And here's maybe some of you might have noticed this. I'm normalizing it. It should be just a decimal value or float value, but I'm exporting as a string. There's a reason for this. By the way, I'm doing my image conversion in Godot, but you could be using other software to create the image. But because I'm using Godot, and it just felt convenient to have this as a string, because I'm going to do a regular expression, or you could actually be doing sub string. So to answer Ryan's question, I am treating the first 2 digits here after the point as the red channel. This is the green channel, this is the blue channel, and this is the alpha channel. So when you store these 8 parts, there is just enough precision that when you convert this back, your values are still conserved. If you want, I can show you the code, right?
Yeah, sure. Sounds weird, yeah.
So I'm basically looking for the extreme cases. If it's all 0, then of course it's pitch black. Or if it's 1, it's all white. So we have to look into these 2 special cases when we do the deconversion. Otherwise, all the other values are just coming in pairs of 2 after the dot. take each two and then distribute them to RGBA. Because you are right, you actually pointed out something really crucial. Initially, when I took this value and I said, okay, you know what, this is going to be the value for all the channels, and then you lose the value because it only it's as precise as like 2 digits, not 8 digits. Essentially, 255 is not a large enough for the information was getting destroyed. In other words.
Yep.
I think you know exactly what I mean, and that's why you asked, because that like numerical data to color, you are losing a lot of information. More code stuff. I think this is that's it. And then the conversion, the conversion is again, we are checking if all the channels are bringing in 0 or 4. It's the 0 or the 1 case. Otherwise, we are multiplying. So in essence, there are 2 layers of normalization. There's one normalization that we do to convert the data to this normal values. And then after those, we do another color normalization that we normalize it in terms of color channels. And then here we do the denormalization from color to the float values, sort of. And from here, we do another min-max conversion to get to the original values. And it's actually understanding the sign and everything. Okay. So how is everybody doing otherwise, work-wise, personal projects, Godot stuff?
Doing all right. Still waiting on those assets, and I'm going to be waiting a bit longer since apparently the guy decided to do the animations in Maya, which doesn't export to Blender properly, because apparently it uses a completely different format for the bones. So that's got to be redone. But
that's crucial.
Yeah. And, I have been working on a second game. I showed a little screenshot of it earlier for how I'm rendering the objects as a sort of vector-based type thing. And I'm working on how to do the terrain for that, which now, when I was working on the terrain, well, I'm still working on the terrain, but one thing I needed to do was figure out how to, create controls in the inspector in Godot in ways, beyond what you get just from exporting variables. Like Godot actually has facilities to give you a lot more control over what kind of controls appear in that inspector for your scenes. Is that something that people would be interested in? Like, if I wanted to more detail on that, and like using the get property list function and everything.
But yeah, anything like that is always interesting to me.
Yeah, if there's a quick demo, that's interesting. Like, what would you use that for? Making like sort of custom views for?
Yes, well, sort of. I guess I can just share the screen right now and give a quick overview. Screen. Okay, so are you seeing my? Sorry?
I'll maximize it for the recording. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, basically, I've got this terrain object, which I just created in Blender using, I forget what tool it was, but just a way to kind of create kind of randomized terrain. And now it's all red because, I'm only working on one type of terrain right right now to start with, but I'd like to be able to have. Well, first of all, let's go to my other thing, my fighter here, which sort of displays how the graphics are going to look in this game. It's not going to be, standard rendering. It's going to be this kind of, mimicking a vector-based approach. And I'd like to do something similar with the terrain. And for that, I'd like to do something where, like, it might show lines at different elevation heights, so that you get this sort of striped look, or maybe or it could also be showing a grid, or have different types of visualizations for different types of terrain. And so
Sorry
for that,
to interrupt you, Jeff. I think when you ran the game, it did not show. Maybe you are sharing only the applications of the screen.
Right. Is it still showing my Godot now? Because when I ran the game, it didn't really show that much important. It was still just the same ship graphic, just without the grid. So I realized when I did it that it's probably not going to show, but it doesn't really need to. It's not that important.
Okay.
So, but what I was saying is that there's going to be different types of terrain, and and the way they look is not going to be governed by just like the texture map that you put on it. But I needed a way to specify what type of terrain would be, like what type of terrain would be on each part of the mesh. And well, for that, I actually am using the texture map, because I figured that there are already tools to paint a texture onto a mesh, so I could just make use of those tools for differentiating the different terrain types. So if you see on the right-hand side here, we've got these terrain types grouped by color. So I haven't written the code to actually do this yet, but this is going to be essentially taking each of the RGB values and determining if it's below or above 50%. So, and that gives us 8 possible colors to work with, since we've got three channels. So 3 channels, 2 possible values gives 8 possibilities. And when I was storing that in data, I didn't want to have to create a separate variable for each one of these to export. I wanted to be able to use an array and standard data structures for this. And at the time, I didn't really know of any other way to get values into the inspector where they can be easily modified, other than just using exports, which are kind of limited. But the method I came across is using this get property list function, which is a built-in function of all nodes, but you can override it to well, I don't know how to summarize this further, but
that makes sense with the code there. That's like, it's kind of wordy, but that's really neat.
And well, you have to use this in conjunction with these get and set functions, because I have to make sure that when it gets values from the inspector, it knows how to deal with them, because it doesn't by default, because we're overriding the default behavior. So it has to check to make sure that, okay, is this a terrain type value, which it uses just by looking at the string of the property type, and then it tries to get the actual value out of it, and converts that to something that can be stored in.
You don't have to do substring, conversion there. There are.
I guess I could divide it based on the slash.
Yeah. So when you are setting or displaying the, there's a way to map the string that you see in the inspector to variables. Then you can only check if the property is equal to the variable, which is already matched to the string that's coming from the inspector. So that conversion is done for you.
Okay.
Yeah. But the logic will be the same. It's just you don't have to worry about the number of indices there, whether it's 13 or 15.
Right. Yeah, and even now, even not knowing that, just splitting it up by the slash would make a lot more sense than what I'm doing here. But yeah, so, and yeah, you have to use these get and set functions to actually do the work, because you're not dealing with variable types that Godot understands, or at least it doesn't know that it understands them, because they do ultimately get mapped to standard variables. But it's just lets you put a lot more into the inspector than I thought that you could, which I think could be convenient for a lot of purposes. It's always nice to have an easy way to set your data without having to go into the code. So yeah, this gives me, I have these terrain types, and they can map to to the different terrain types depending on what color the texture is, and then what color they actually show up as in the game. Because I might want to have two of the same terrain type but different colors, and so I needed to make sure that those were selectable, so they default to the actual color of the texture. But if you click on them, you can get a color picker to do whatever you need to do with them. So yeah, I mean, I hadn't really prepared for a presentation on this or anything, but I thought it might be an interesting thing, since one of our presenters couldn't make it. So
yeah, I work with things like this all the time. Custom data types in the inspector, which is very handy. And yeah, it only has these three parts: get property list, which is responsible for listing the properties in the inspector, and then the get and set is basically just all the binding is done in those. It's like when you set the value from the inspector, or an outside script is requesting the variable or the value from the script file, that's when get is triggered. So, and you just put your variables logic there in its own if block. That's it.
Yeah.
Cool stuff.
So,
so what I'm going to suggest to you, Jeff, I started off like this with like custom inspector. In my game, I have plants, and then tomato is extending from plant and whatever. But then you go into this sort of where people say composition over inheritance. So I decided to create that custom inspector, but instead of binding it into the script itself, I'm keeping it in a resource file. So the resource, so there's like a plant resource, and then
that sounds nice.
Yeah, then tomato is basically saying, well, I'm a plant. I'm just going to use the plant resource, and the inspector is still custom. And then you can customize it even further when there's a different kind of plant other than regular like tomato and stuff. So
yeah, I might do something like that if it gets more complex.
So you get minimum inheritance and a lot of composition benefit, but with the custom inspector anyway.
Right.
Really cool.
Yeah, like I'm a big fan of interfaces.
Yeah.
And like that sort of sounds similar. It would be nice if they had a little, mini language that let you define your variable interfaces that would be like compositional, and you could, that would handle all of the user interface. That would be nice. Yeah, it just looks a little wordy to like have those functions, but like,
yeah,
at least you can do it. Yeah.
But there was where was it? It always looked like official Godot help forum. Forgot the domain name. Anyway, someone wrote some kind of like a helper function. Just one get, one set, and it's storing all your variables inside a dictionary. So then you don't write those if-else cases. But I mean, in Jeff's case, he's overloading the meaning of color. So I'm not sure if it could be extended to that like to that much. I don't know, but yeah, it seems worthy, but still very helpful.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, because that's something I'd been dealing with, trying to get exports to, be more useful than they often are, but specifying the proper data type and everything, so you get the right selectors and the right hints and things like that. Where this kind of bypasses that whole thing, and exports are still very useful for things that they actually apply to, because it's a lot easier to type export and then in brackets a couple of keywords to specify what data type you're dealing with, but. When you need to go beyond that, I was kind of surprised to find out that we had all this available to us.
Yeah. So here's an example of going beyond. Because you are writing get set and then that get property list, you could do things like if the value of, like, you could actually put booleans, and if something is checked, which enables and disables a whole section in this. Like I've done that, and it's really it's super cheap to do, really. Like you have it's as if you are combining 3-4 different inspectors into one with just the right combination of like true and false.
Right. Yeah, I guess you could use the tool that they use for like layers, for collision layers and things. So that would allow it all to be compressed into just this little, cluster of blocks.
Yeah. Well, since Godot is running Godot, you could technically run a game in the inspectors.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's really pushing it, but.
That kind of reminds me of like System Shock 2, where you had that little PDA that could be used, was normally used for displaying logs and things like that, but you could also run like Minesweeper or something like that.
Yeah, those meta. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of changing the topic. I'm curious what kind of cool project Kyle's son has done.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Landon, a month long was maybe a bit aspirational on my part. So he gave up a few days ago. And I'm following right behind him. I don't have it in me, but I'll show you what we got, because it's still pretty cool.
Yeah. By the way, could you mention for the recording, if people catch up this on YouTube, how old your kid is? And
Landon's 12.
Okay, so a 12-year-old has done this. So go ahead.
Yeah, he took code. So I got to do 3D for the first time in a long time, and I ended up rendering this bug ball thing that you're going to see, but I really liked this render and I wanted to show it.
Cool.
That's the icon for our project. So Landon made it's kind of a mess. I was thinking Lemmings, pinball. Hold on, it boots on the wrong screen. Can you see big gray screen?
Yeah, level select settings, quit.
Okay. So Landon did like almost all the code, and Landon wanted something more chaotic. You got this spawner that pops out bugs that bounce around, and in the top left you can see I kind of have 3 tools. I can drop cardboard boxes.
Now, is that using Godot's built-in Toon shader?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And I can drop, these boxes, and I can also drop these fans that blast them up.
Nice.
And the idea is to get them in the goal. We don't have a final goal, but like, whoop, so they go crazy. It's a lot of fun. There was a remove button. It's gone now. You can rotate stuff. It's not super useful with the tools we have, and we don't have a preview for what you're about to place. So that's not super great. But yeah, he did the first-person controller. He made stuff bounce around. I modeled the fan. As you can tell, it's not super professional, but he did all the code to make everything work, except obviously not the code to make the propeller spin, but that's fine. Yeah, and this is all we've made. I made these rock textures on Procreate because they added the 3D painting thing like 2 weeks ago, and I was like, I'll try that out. That's what Landon and I made.
Nice work. So you said rotate wasn't useful, but I think it could be because you have those slanted cardboard boxes. So if the angle is different, are those bugs flying in a different direction?
Yeah. So right now it's just raw physics.
Yeah.
I wanted it to be like sliding on ice, but we hit issues and Landon insisted on coding, so I couldn't sit down and get into it. But yeah, you're right. You can drop these in all different angles.
Yeah, cool.
They're less useful in this world of a lot of randomness.
Yeah.
But
you could strategize and make them more useful to you.
You can drop these fans and just make everything go flying. Kind of create an infinite fan machine. Keep launching them off. Yeah. So he did the reset when you jump off the edge and it spawns another bug. It's keeping track of how many bugs I've saved by putting them in here. It's all using grid maps. So our scenes, sandbox level, you can hop in here and grab the grid map and just go crazy, and then you can grab the bug spawner, right, and rotate it. I don't know, like that. And if I hit save and run the game, it'll boot onto some invisible monitor because I don't know what's wrong with my setup right now. Just a sec. I need to maximize it, drag it over, level select 1. So that's the new level, and now they're launching out of that thing like that. Well, I thought they were going through that wall, but I think they just go right past it. And it's airborne for some reason. The grid map stuff is weird. Yeah, all of these blocks are 1 block off the ground. I had a bad height set. My bad.
Oh, yeah. Was not 0.
Oh, yeah, you can trap them. If you put a box right on one, they get stuck in it. There's all kinds of fun bugs.
That's what I thought with the slanted, that you could put 2 facing each other, and one of these guys could bounce back and forth between those 2.
Yeah. Landon made a whole house at one point. He was just sitting there playing it, and he just built a whole house around a bug. It's pretty funny. This one's got this one's playing basketball with one. So it was fun. I've been doing a lot of 3D and Unity at work, and I miss a lot of the quality of life stuff. But the grid map is really nice for grid-based levels. I was really sloppy when I did this one, but if you where do you do it? Yeah, you just knock it down a floor there. We're technically at -1, and then I could give everything a proper base, but whatever. Yeah, that's what we got done. Well, honestly, that's what he got done. I did very little work on this, except I helped with some physics, math that he had trouble with, and I kind of split it all out so it's not all in one big scene.
Yeah.
There's a core level that gets loaded, and you send it the level that you want it to actually, the level geometry that you want it to load. Stuff like that was me, and figuring out sort of the Blender, my Blender scene.
Yeah.
Going from Blender to Godot to grid map tile set.
Yeah.
Without destroying data.
Yeah.
Is like a huge pain. So that was I spent so much time just doing dumb pipeline stuff, and then we're not even going to finish it. So what's the point?
So what's the pipeline? Maybe.
It's just honestly 90% of it is I've never done it. I don't know what GLTF is. It seems like a bunch of letters.
It's a format that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'd never used any of that stuff before. I don't know what. That's my.
Yeah, I have some experience.
So I just. This is also my nice screenshot taking.
So my advice to you would be, there's an option in the export settings that you choose like selected objects. That helps. Also, you exclude the camera light and you try to import mesh as much as possible.
Yep. Yeah, that's pretty much what I did. It's all kind of a mess right now because I set this up to take nice screenshots for pictures, and it's all crazy. But yeah, there's this environment collection that I use in Blender, and I just made sure to keep it organized. And then when you open it up in Godot, your scene is I know where it's been placed. Yeah, your scene just looks like this, and then I can overwrite it without worrying too much about destroying data. And then you right-click this and say convert to grid tile set because it uses some arbitrary resource mesh library.
Yeah,
that's what it's called. This arbitrary resource item that stores all the meshes you can place. And then we have an additional batch of metadata in our inventory, which are also resources, that have an icon, a name, whether it's a grid map or a scene, because the fan is a separate scene, but all the blocks you place are actual grid map pieces, and what index it is and stuff like that. So pretty neat. Managed to keep data separate from gameplay for once. But even even without being busy, I really just wanted to get back to my other project, which is the roguelike I've been working on. Just yak shaving away on that. And but this was really fun. I hadn't done 3D in a long time.
Cool.
Kind of looks like a horse.
So there's this website, Kids Can Code.
Yep.
Is he using that?
No, he's using Dad Library. He just messaged me on Discord. No, there's he's using a lot of GD Quest. Art Beast he was using when he started with Godot and stuff like that. Just standard Godot YouTuber people.
Kids Can Code also has a lot of useful tutorials or code samples.
Yeah. I don't have a lot to show for the roguelike I'm working on, but I took someone's C# loot tables articles. They're old. They're like from 2010 or something. And I made it with Godot resources. So you can just use a bunch of resources to make loot tables. Don't have like runtime data, but they'll pass off the data. So I have like A, B, B or C, C. And then like in test base, there's an array and whether or not it's enabled and what the probability of this one is, which doesn't make sense. But once you get into the recursion of it, it makes sense.
Yeah.
And it holds on to B or C, which has a probability of 16, as well as A, which has a probability of 8. And then there's a unique concept. So once it's been pulled out of the random hat, it can't be pulled again. An always concept. So you ensure it gets pulled at least once, i.e. if you're giving them like some amount of gold and then one of these 3 green armors and then, type of silk depending on what level they are and stuff like that. Like it's all resource, just like inline resources that it supports. B or C contains both B and C and has random setup for that. So I was pretty happy with this. Works pretty good. It's totally academic because I have no actual like mechanics to feed it to, to feed into it yet. And I've been reading design patterns. So I'm setting up a service locator so I don't have to keep sending. I don't have to use statics or keep sending things like the UI manager into the player controller and stuff like that. I'm writing a bunch of stuff to try and keep that separated and clean because I work very front end in my day job. So I'm usually adapting to other people's architecture. My new tech lead is using a lot of like async and reactive programming type stuff in Unity. And it's not something I'm used to, but it's gotten me interested in like picking up design patterns and something other than like archaic inheritance stuff that I was using in my last job. So this doesn't actually look different, but I changed a whole bunch of code. And now it's broken, so there's no point in trying to show it. maybe.
So what broke?
That's a good question. Something I'm in the middle of refactoring it. What did break? What was that error? Probably it's trying to do something. Non-existent function is busy in base nil. Okay, so actually that's not too bad. I guess I
Make
should
it busy.
not use brackets. If current entity is nil.
Or null. More likely.
Oh, is it going to be null? I don't understand. I still don't understand the difference there.
Well, there is no nil in. Well, that's not a keyword. Null is the keyword.
Where did it go?
If it was Python, it would be none. Just, different languages use different terms.
And if it was JavaScript, then you get more confused between null and undefined and empty string or like.
Yeah, a bunch of these things are happening out of order because of processing. That's all.
That's what you get when you're using a language where the design philosophy seems to be that any bit of code should make it do something, even if that something is completely nonsensical. I'm talking about JavaScript, not your stuff here.
Most of my stuff is probably nonsensical as well.
By the way, we are asking you to fix this stuff here, but chances are you won't remember it after the stream. You are putting a whole bunch of changes into different files. So you may
I'm not even
this
calling
later.
setup player. I separated out the functionality and I didn't even.
There's no setup.
It's really annoying on this computer. I don't know why. There we go. There he is. Hey, buddy.
Hello, yellow guy.
So there's a square around him because I'm working on sort of the square select UI where you highlight certain squares so that you know which ones you're allowed to click on and stuff. But yeah, this all looks the same. I don't think I've done anything with this. Just run around an empty room. Yeah, and I did the random thing, and I'm just cleaning up a bunch of stuff now. It's nice.
What do you think is the benefit of the refactor? Like what are you hoping for?
Well, my player. So there's a runtime map object that has sort of context sensitive map information, hallways, rooms, stuff like that. Then there's the actual generated tile map, which is a separate thing, which is what I need to use to figure out if a tile is collidable or not. I have a custom resource that derives from tile map. And then I have a UI manager that controls all of my UI stuff, that layer. So when it's his turn, I want to tell the UI, here are the cells that my player could potentially use for you, move to, highlight these cells. And I want the player to wait until it gets some input to know where I've clicked, right? Or if I've pressed a button. So previously I was sending the map to the player because that's how he knew whether or not the next tile was going to be collidable or not. And I was sending the UI manager through the setup chain. I was sending all these big managers and stuff like that through the setup chain to the player so he could use those to figure out, if this next tile is collidable and also communicate with the UI and also communicate with the turn manager, right, when his turn ended. So the turn manager stuff I turned into signals. That way the player doesn't know that his turn is being managed and stuff like that. But the turn manager can react to that kind of stuff. The UI I turned into, I have it's called a service locator pattern, I guess, which is basically just there's an object that exists that you can tell it what the UI is and you can ask it for the UI. So right now the UI is set on game startup and the player can just go service locator.get UI. These are the cells I can move to, show them to the player. And if I change That way I can swap it out at runtime if I need to. If the UI is different for people using a keyboard than it is for people using a mouse, I can swap it at runtime. Like I'm not directly referencing the UI manager. I'm asking something to find me the current UI manager. So that's going to be handy maybe in the future. Most of this is just, none of it is explicit use cases, except for I'm writing a ton of code and I realize I'm sending giant objects down, and I should be using either signals, which gets messy super quick, I find, because I have to write them as strings a lot of times, like the method names. So I'm using a service locator because I've been reading about design patterns and stuff like that, and that one seemed to fit the UI stuff.
Okay. Because like a singleton makes things simple and often is fine, but if you want something that's sort of swappable, then singletons. I think it's still
you could still use singletons and mix it with the service pattern.
Yeah, the service locator is a singleton.
Yeah.
Right, so I'm using one singleton and I'm asking it for all the stuff that I kind of want to be globally accessible, and that's nice because it gives me these shims, these injection points where I can like change what gets retrieved based on some game state, and stuff like that. Like
makes sense.
For the signals, are you using some kind of event bus as a singleton? Because that's really helpful. Then it doesn't get messy.
Sorry, I don't know. I don't necessarily know what the word event bus means. This is my turn.
It's just a made-up name. Basically, call it event manager. Create a singleton where you define all your signals. And if a component one is done with something, you just say event manager trigger, like emit that signal. Maybe like the player is basically saying, you create all the signals in this event manager as a singleton, and then every object has access to this singleton. Well, we know that. And then so when you are done with some actions, you just emit the signal, and whoever wants to be notified by certain events, they register themselves at when like usually in onReady. So that way everything is handled through this singleton.
Totally. That's sorry, at work that's a message broker, but that's 100%. That's a good idea, especially for stuff like achievements and jazz.
Yeah. You can do stuff with groups and signals that are okay too, instead of having like one thing that knows everything or like manages everything.
Yeah, if you could combine groups with event manager, then you really have something powerful. Well, it has different names. Like in terms of design pattern, it's observer pattern or publisher subscriber pattern. But essentially, you register an event and you have event listeners, that kind of.
Yeah, that's cool.
If you did ActionScript, I think like sometimes people use those names to event listeners in JavaScript too. Different languages have different terms for the same. Good. Sorry.
Yeah, that's cool. That's I used ActionScript, but I used like Flixel and stuff on top of it.
So you know exactly what
ActionScript. That's neat. Yeah, I've also written all this like grid math stuff, and to do like to get certain, like it's showing a box before, and then I can do this to get like a cross around the player instead of a box. Oh, this is getting very old very fast.
Maybe you set the run, in the other monitor in the editor settings.
So now instead of a box around them, there's a cross, right? And then there's a I want to say it's called range, but I actually don't know.
Yeah, So that would be like if you're equipping different weapons or whatnot, it would show you like different interaction ranges or something.
Yeah, so this is literally just me testing that my get cells works. So this is like get range 3, whether it's my fireball spell can hit anything within a range of 3, or whether it's like these are the places I can move to. That's just like cell retrieval, and then I'm telling the UI to display those cells. Yeah, because my plan for a lot of this stuff is just get cells, get targetables in cell, let the player select from that set, yield to that selection. This is pseudocode, not real code. Don't judge me. And then get cells and like the AoE effect around whichever one they've selected, get the targetables there, get anything that's burnable, and then the attacks and burns, but stagger them so that they pop out. And I'm trying to make it so that I can write code that's like that streamlined, where I just use the result of the previous line, or I just bake results as I go. And then if I can get it to this point, I can probably make them into resources. And then I have like a nice, if I can make abilities with resources, I'm in a good place because I can just put in a bunch of data and move on with my life. That's the intention in the long run, but I don't know if I'll get there.
Yeah, no, it seems really nice. Yeah.
And yeah, the A star is
working
through Godot's A star. Yeah, there's just a ton of little systems. I'm still connecting everything. It's going to take a long time.
So
that does not do what I expected. There we go.
I was wrong about the next show and tell. I thought we wouldn't have another date left in this year, but we have one show and tell coming in December. So that's 3 weeks later.
The 16th?
Maybe you could make more progress and clean up the code, and might be really good with the enough modularity you want to introduce to your code.
Yeah, we'll see.
And maybe your son's microbes will have a more variety. Could show that too next time.
The one, the bug one.
Yeah, the bug one. Yeah,
I think he's done. I think he's moved on. He's working on stuff with his other
if
buddies.
he has something
you know what?
new, then that's also welcome too.
I will post his itch page. Cool. If anyone's interested in seeing his other stuff, because he's been doing quite a bit.
Briefly show the meeting notes to the stream so people can see. It's lrd123.itch.io. So everybody who watches the YouTube footage later, they will see.
I also posted that link to Monaco's steganography stuff because we were talking about putting data in images, and they just take the least important bit in each color and change it to some set of data so that you can give levels to each other with images. But he ran into issues because when you'd upload an image to Facebook or whatever, the like site-based compression would obviously mangle all the actual data and stuff like that. But it's still a cool article. It's an old one though.
Cool. So Juan has been quiet. Still there? I'm still not sure if his microphone is working.
Ryan? I need to head out.
Okay.
I've got some day job that I have to do, sadly.
No shame in that. So,
but thanks.
Yeah.
And if we can get that GDNative for next show and tell, that'd be great too. Yeah.
That will be most likely in January. But would you guys mind if we split the next show and tell so we squeeze the presentation? But it depends on Joseph. The reason why I'm asking is because it's, I think, December 16th. Usually people feel in holiday mode. if you would rather have it in January, let me know, or I'll ask him if he can do it in December still. So thank you, Ryan, and good luck with your day job.
Thanks very much.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Good night to you.
See ya.
So, yeah, my day job is still pretty much this. Are you going to the office, Kyle?
No, we're full remote.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is really nice. So I might move.
You might move.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's expensive living here.
It is. It is
expensive. Yeah, I switched gigs to get full-time remote. So
okay, maybe I didn't quite catch it. So are you with Yukon Games now or not?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
I was with Yukon for 4 years, and then they sold a chunk of the company to Jam City from the States. Yeah, I was a part of that chunk of company. There's like a 2-year earnout contract that ended, and I came back to Yukon. That's all.
I see.
Didn't really change jobs.
Yeah, pretty much same people, same building, kind of. Yeah, that happened to me once. One morning we signed new contracts under a different company name, and still the same seat, same hours, everything was the same. The next paycheck had a different label. That's it. So where do you think you'll go? Milton, London, that far, or?
Oh, my wife's now working. My kids haven't started school, so we're if it wasn't for the pandemic, but we're open slate in terms of that kind of stuff. I don't want to leave Canada, so there's that.
Yeah.
She doesn't really care. I was looking at Halifax. I was looking at Sudbury.
Yeah.
And I don't really want to go as cold as like Winnipeg and Edmonton and stuff, but we definitely looked. So it's a fun, big academic thing right now. It's not going to get serious for another few months, but yeah.
Well, see, if the job is remote, going to somewhere like Winnipeg, yeah, I mean, cost of living is maybe cheap, but then if it's too cold and you have different plans, yeah, there are different factors.
Yeah, for sure.
I lived in Fredericton for a few years. That was pretty nice. That was a while ago. It's still nice, but it's an okay town.
So yeah, we're looking in Ontario, but further out. Like the most serious one right now is probably Sudbury, because we'd still be like drivable to our families if something happened. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Or at the very least, airport distance, sort of like airport accessible, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, really, the cost of living in.
Yeah, I got my my apartment before things really skyrocketed, and I get small increases in rent per month, but legally they can't increase it that much. So lucky in that department, but yeah, I had been thinking, if this game sells, I might go off somewhere that is a little bit cheaper.
I know one country that is super cheap right now.
Turkey.
Yes, my home country. Yeah. They are having real trouble with the exchange rate. Yeah, it's if you earn dollars, or you make your living in dollars, and you would rather have it go a really long way, you may want to live in Turkey. So, except maybe you shouldn't.
Yeah.
I was born in a town called Elliott.
Caveat.
Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was just saying I was born in a town called Elliott Lake. That's about 2-hour drive from Sudbury, and it would probably be really cheap. I imagine none of you have even heard of it, so that gives you an idea of the size of it.
Yeah.
But hey, one day if things change for the better for my home country, then I will advertise it differently. But right now, no. Like maybe a vacation is good, but long-term living, no, I wouldn't. But honestly, if you guys have vacation plans, it's super cheap.
Okay.
Speaking of holiday plans, Christmas is still a month away, but he plans to take time off.
Well, I'm planning on going to see my family, which I wasn't able to do last year. So
you were there recently, though, no?
Yeah, I was there in the summer.
Yeah.
I usually take 2 trips down, one in the summer and one at Christmas.
Cool. How about you
and
guys?
I missed both of them last year, but this year I'm hoping to take both of them. I mean, I'm sure I'll be able to travel. The question is, will I be able to actually see them when I get there? Because New Brunswick is now they're not in Fredericton, which I just mentioned. I had lived in Fredericton, but they don't. So just in case of any confusion, but they're getting hit pretty hard by COVID, even more so than we are, and so they've had to do some restrictions over there, and who knows what'll be happening by Christmas. Hopefully, with the kids getting vaccinated, that'll help slow the spread a bit.
How about you guys?
I'll probably go see my family, and we'll probably try and see Jackie's family, but I think that if anything happens with COVID, we'll just back off. We're more excited about setting up our own traditions as a little family than we are engaging with our parents. You know what I mean? We're at that point where it feels like
I see.
Kind of drift off.
The tradition of getting together is as the kids are getting older, slightly.
Yeah, it's like I don't even really talk to my sisters anymore because the kids are everywhere. You know what I mean? And then by the time we leave, it's like, I like seeing the kids and everything. Don't get me wrong, but there's we're definitely more mellow than the Christmases at my family's. So we're trying to like cordon off Christmas Eve and Boxing Day and say these 3 days no go. Anytime outside, we'll come see you, but let us have these 3 days. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, I got an extra week on top of. Well, I got an extra 4 days on top of like the week and a half Yukon gives everyone. So get a nice chunk of time off. That'll be good.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. Now that I'm self-employed, I don't know. Like I'm not experiencing anymore. I'm not really worried about it. But it's like, well, our company is still giving that last week off. Because that, at least my experience when I used to work, well, for the man. So we would usually get the last week off. But is that still a thing while working remotely?
It is. Okay. None of our benefits have changed working remotely, except obviously catered lunches are a lot less useful when we're not all sharing the same calf. That's the big one, I think. The intention is everyone's sort of on equal footing there. We can hotel desks in the office if we want to, but I'm pretty sure they're gonna sublet chunks of the office again to try and make back the difference on the rent they're paying for that place. And we have a game designer in Calgary, and we just hired a platform client dev from Brazil. So Yukon is leaning hard into just going fully remote and worldwide.
I guess one day if they want to hire Godot developers, You'll be our gateway there.
Yeah, I don't know. They're pretty slow to move, so we'll see.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that either, because they have to protect their commercial interests. Making changes, it's not easy. It's about continuity too. You hire one or two guys, they get sick, they move on. Suddenly your projects are in danger because you cannot find enough people with understanding the technology.
Yeah.
So it's a big risk. Not everything new and cool and whatever is like, well, there's a whole other business side.
Yeah, I'm really excited for Godot to get super boring, because then I might be able to get a job with it.
Yeah. Eventually, if Godot for either comes out or doesn't, I don't know, depending on which perspective you look at it. I guess in 10 years, we might all just form a company and do something with Godot. If nothing works out.
I was looking at, because I wrote sort of like a map generator node graph tool in Unity a while back. It's super handy for games with procedurally generated maps, and I wanted to write it in Godot. So I was like, okay, how involved is it to get fast noise, which is a C# noise library, working in Godot? And I found a PR for it that sounds like it works perfectly, but it's like 12 months old. Like, it's a full year old at this point, I think. And I was like,
So you said
I really want this.
Fast noise?
Yeah, that's just the name of the library.
I see.
It implements a bunch of different noise types, and it does it quickly.
Maybe you need something very specific, but in Godot there's built-in simplex noise.
Yeah, I want like Voronoi and turbulence and the stacking and all that stuff. It's like a
FBM and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, there's this is closed.
But see, if you could find the code in C#, could just put those in Godot as C#. You don't need to write it in GD.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
you
but then I
just
have to
access
recompile
them
the engine, right?
from another script, like the GD script.
Yeah.
That might work.
Yeah.
Are you trying to find it?
Yeah, I found a closed one. This isn't it though. Oh, here. Yeah. I'll post it into the meeting notes.
Sure.
And it's actually like, if you click on the fixes thing, the proposals from 2018, the issues from 2018.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, he opened up this, they opened up this PR on January 15, 2020. And it's just been going back and forth forever.
Hopefully it will be in there.
Yeah, I hope so. But it sounds like, based on the argument, like the person who wrote it is tired of constantly rebasing it and fixing it so that they can test it. And they keep leaving the PR after he does it and not testing it. So he's kind of sick of them. And I don't know. There's a whole bunch of drama.
Yeah, I've heard of some drama concerning the pull requests and such. Hence, we are still waiting.
Yeah.
So, any bets? Well, this is really
on when Godot 4 is coming out.
Yes.
When it's done.
When it's done. Yeah. But then the question is it ever going to be done?
Yeah.
Define done.
Well, yeah. I mean, they are still making progress. You know, you still see updates from time to time about new features being completed or being worked on for Godot 4. So it hasn't been abandoned.
No, of course not.
That's good, at least.
And it sounds like they have like a plan. Like I forget what I was reading, but someone was like, "Yeah, that's planned for 4.1." So it's not like they're still taking in like new features and stuff for 4.0. I think it's just a matter of finishing off the stuff that they have set up.
So Aaron was saying, one of the members group, unlikely next year, most likely 2023. Either way, I'm still writing my book, Blender and Godot engine. If by February or March, that's when I'm finishing Blender material and writing Godot stuff. If Godot 4 magically comes out, then I'll have to revise the book. But otherwise, sometime by the end of June, the book will be released with Godot or for Godot version 3.3 or 4. Let's see.
There are 2,364 open issues or pull requests that are labeled Godot 4. Yeah. So sometime at least, I suspect.
Yeah. Well, not in the next 6 months. That's guaranteed. Because I think someone gave there's a burn down graphic, or we just lost one. How many new open requests versus how many closed by interval?
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I don't know where the graph is, but seems like the merge requests are pull requests are not handled quickly enough. Let's hope for the best.
Code frequency, maybe on insights.
Yeah, you're looking at the GitHub, right?
Well, they merged 100 pull requests in the last week. They've got 49 open.
Maybe the tide will turn. It's but I think there are more people aware of the project, and they create more issues, more pull requests. I think that number is really not working in favor of like Godot force release if they are discussed and sort of considered. I think maybe that's why they are doing this. 3.3, then 3.4. Now they are discussing 3.5. It's like by the time 4 is out, almost is a very a strong word. So many cool features that we're expecting to see in 4.0. They are making their way to previous versions, 3.4 maybe, and 5, 6. So it's kind of gonna catch up. So the irony is, by the time 4 is out, well, what is new?
Well,
that's kind of what I'm thinking is happening slightly. Like,
I think the Vulkan stuff is not getting backported at all. I think there's a handful of foundational stuff, and anything that relies on that is going to be 4.0 specific.
Yeah,
but
I exaggerated it, of course, because they are actually rewriting the core engine for 4.0. So that's not going to be in 3.6 or 7. So I exaggerated. But the tangible features, what people think is happening, like fixes to grid map, it's going to be in 4.0, but maybe in 3.6 or 7 too. Which is okay, because why do you have to wait for a major release a year ahead? You may as well use it in 3 months if it's coming out.
Yeah, I'm not actually interested in too many of the new features of Godot. It's mostly just the fact that Godot 4 is going to be the architecture going forward. So I have started the second project, but I'm kind of hesitant about it because who knows, I might just be starting to get complex, and then Godot 4.0 comes out, and I don't want to keep it on Godot 3 and future features that are being added and risk not getting security updates when the game is still relevant. But then if I switch it to Godot, porting and rewriting that needs to be done.
I'm the opposite. I probably won't even move to 4 until we get 4.1. I'm like, I stay on the old stuff.
Because
you guys take the shiny new breaking stuff.
Well, I mean, it's do if you're working on a project, then you don't want to move that to the new version. But if you're starting a new project, then it makes sense to use the newest version that is in any way, ready for prime time use.
Yeah, each has its own benefits, but I think working for a corporation, Kyle, you have the wisdom or the, I don't know, you have seen
No
it
wisdom.
firsthand. That's like, well, new. It doesn't always mean better, or we should just switch to see how. And then.
Yeah, I've been on one successful project that was written in a very old school way and had very strict rules about what we were allowed to do in code, and it survived a few storms caused by like Facebook API updates and Unity upgrades out of line and stuff like that, and we were always just like, fine. Sort of like, it sucks working on a game that is not super like forward moving in terms of like the tech stack
but
and
it's
stuff like
stable.
that. But it opens your eyes to like, you don't need that to make, you know what I mean? Not to make money, but to make something that people engage with is what I'm trying to say, in that realm at least. So I was fine doing boring stuff for a bit, but yeah, the tech lead at the new place is doing all kinds of crazy fun architecture stuff. So I'm learning design patterns and trying to be able to keep up because I'm very much like on the rendering pipeline side of things, but I'm dealing with a lot of weird stuff I'm not used to.
And for Jeff, I wouldn't worry too much about conversion really. I have to do it, but
yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not going to do it for the main project that I'm working on. That's going to be made entirely with Godot 3. But for the second project, who knows?
Yeah, my project is actually really big. I think a month ago I tried Godot 4. Felt so incomplete and thought, well, I decided to make the conversion a month ago. Well, it's not stable yet. I can already predict the hardships that I will face if I ever decide to make the conversion. And it may not even be worth it because I mean, my game is 3D. Could I benefit from the new global illumination and such? Maybe. But if I can handle all that with the version 3, maybe I'm okay. And I'm already doing my crazy image conversions stuff, so.
I'd like to get on Godot 4 as soon as it's practical. Just, Godot 3, it's good, but as you just mentioned, it's not that great for 3D, and a lot of the games that I planned in the future are 3D, so I'd like to, get used to Godot 4, and I'm thinking Godot 5 will probably be a long way off, because Godot 4 kind of shores up all the major issues that Godot currently has, which is mostly the fact that it's not that great for 3D. So, after that, they probably won't need to make a major architecture change for quite a while.
I guess when 4 is out, people will expect to see the new stuff from like Unreal.
Yeah.
So
Nanite technology, real-time global illumination, volumetric lighting. Yeah.
Would be
I
nice.
think it's funny
but
because
they could add those things to Godot 4 though, without changing the architecture completely.
Yeah,
well, I think they could. I don't know what the code base is like, but nanites, no, they wouldn't be able to do that.
Totally different. Like that's a non-polygonal rendering thing. That would be a whole thing. I don't know how it works. I haven't looked it up, but it seems bizarre to me. I got a jet, but it was a good shot.
Cool, man. Awesome.
And thanks for the demo of the image stuff. That's cool.
Yeah, it's weird, I know, but hopefully I will make good use of it, and I will update you guys with its benefits.
Yeah.
It was really hard to pull it off, and even really more difficult to talk about, because it's so like, what am I really doing? What am I talking about? Cool. Thank you again.
All right. I'll try to do some work that is user facing by the next time we have a meet.
I'm taking off
Talk to
too.
you guys later.
Okay. Bye, Jeff. Bye, Kyle.
Bye.